Welcome back to Shedlock 2000's Land Rover garage and many interesting things. Well, you can see we've got the best weather here in Alberta. It arrived last night and I've been looking this morning on the TikTok. I know all the things, see, and I was browsing through and there was a lot of videos about cars that were all sort of stranded on Deerfoot in Calgary and things in ditch and stuff all over really. Anyway, it's about -10 at the moment here, and it'll come and go, this will, but as you can see perhaps behind me we've got the snow, the wet snow's turned to ice on the Dragon. You can see it's snowing and doing its thing, but what I want to do really, in anticipation of folk asking a lot of questions about on Land Rover forums, on Facebook and other things about tyres really, so I wanted to give you just 5 or 10 minutes of my time to tell you the difference about winter tyres, dedicated winter tyres, and AT tyres and road tyres, so that you might understand the difference and why winter tyres are important in weather like this and why you should have them on before it turns like this. And with that we'll move into garage where it's well, not any warmer, but where the tyres are. So here we've got 3 different tyres. This is the original road tyre that came with this vehicle. Actually, it's off the spare, and so this is the original equipment tyre for this Range Rover in North America. This is my dedicated winter. This is a Nokian Hakkapeliitta 9, and this is my Nokian Outpost AT, and this tyre has probably about 35,000 miles on it. This tyre is on its 4th season, and this has probably got about 25,000 to 30,000 miles on it, and this tyre is brand new. It hasn't been used or worn at all. Now, one of the things that I wanted to share with you is going to be very difficult to explain over the camera, because you can't feel the tyre, but this tyre has worn quite a lot in its short lifespan, even though it's only 30,000 miles. And the reason it's worn quite so much is because it's very soft rubber. And this is a very soft rubber as well. You can't tell but these from the camera, but the sipes on these little lines, the sipes are becoming sort of slanted like that, and that's because the rubber is wearing. It's very soft. This has obviously never been run, but the rubber's quite hard. You can't dig your nail into it in any way the way that you can this. And the thing that makes a winter tyre, or a tyre that's an AT tyre that's good for this sort of weather, is a soft compound. That's one of the things that's very important. So this tyre has worn more, and it'll probably say actually it's just about 80%. So Nokian give you this cute little, it'll be difficult to see on the camera, but it gives you this cute little tread wear indicator, 40%, 60% and 80%, and we're just losing the 80%, so we've lost 20%, it's 20% done. This is the same. This has got 80% here and a little winter snowflake here, and when that disappears, this tyre is no good in the winter, because it obviously needs a certain set of tread depth to be efficient. This doesn't mean that you can't run this tyre off in the summer. It just means that it's not going to be as good in the winter. It's obviously a studded tyre, and we'll discuss those later. This tyre is brand new, so there's no wear indicators on it at all, but these little lumps here, these indicate when the tyre's shot and illegal and you can't run it anymore. But this hard compound makes this a very durable tyre in the summer and on the road condition. On the road, it makes it a very durable tyre, a very long lasting tyre, and that's why you get the good mileage. The downside is that it isn't very sticky. And what happens with these tyres is that they slip quite a lot, in virtue of the fact that the compound isn't very sticky, and it doesn't sort of adhere to the ice or the snow very well. Both of these tyres have that softer compound, which makes them a little bit better on the snow and ice, just in terms of rubber. The downside, of course, is that it wears more quickly. Moving to the overall tread design, you can see with this AT tyre, there's these large lumps in the middle, these lugs, and we have lugs on the outside here as well, these lumps. And the intention of this is to provide sharp angles to dig away at the mud and to flirt the mud out when the tyre compresses at the bottom, to compress the mud, and then as the tyre opens up on the way around, it ejects the mud, giving you a fresh biting surface each time. The larger these lumps and the more separated they are, the better it is for mud and shale and gravel. The downside is that the more separated and luggy they are, the more they wear on the road and the louder they are. So it's always a sort of a trade-off between how luggy you want the tyre to be, how quiet and usable you want the tyre. Bigger, thicker, isolated lugs wear more quickly on the highway as well. So this is a compromised tyre where they've reinforced each lump with another piece in between that's lower tread but has some connectivity to provide extra strength. They've also provided lugs at the side here that have an angled bar in the middle that permits water to be ejected out of the side and from the centre. This you can see here more obviously with these sort of scalloped, almost tractor type tyres, where any water that comes into the tyre is squished up into these lines and then ejected out of the side. This is particularly important with slush and snow, because as you roll over it, you want the snow and the slush to be ejected out of the side to provide stability on the tyre. This is done here to a certain extent by the continuation of lines out to provide water ejection rates all the way through. This tyre is importantly different from the KO2, which has already been identified as having very poor water ejection, because its S-blocks provide no access from the inside of the tyre to the outside of the tyre. And that means that there's nowhere for the water to go. When there's nowhere for the water to go, the water doesn't compress and it lifts the car ever so slightly, and that's how you get aquaplaning. So this water ejection is very important. I would have preferred to have seen these lugs here open altogether, but we'll go into why in a minute that Nokian have done this, and the reason is a function of the aramid sidewalls, but we'll discuss that in a second. You can see the same kind of tread design here. When the water is squished into the middle of these two rails, it's permitted to exit the tyre through these lines that sort of squish the water out of the way. But you'll see there's no sharp edges on this tyre. There's nothing to bite away at the dirt and the mud. And that's what makes this a very poor tyre off-road. There's no aggressive lugs, there's nothing for the there's no part of the tyre can bite into that fresh soil and then eject it. What it does is it squishes the mud into here, and if it can't squish the mud into here, then the tyre is lifted off the ground and it becomes unstable. And this is why these kinds of tyres are not the best kind of tyres for off-road. Accordingly, if you do go off-road a little bit, you know, if you use your vehicle off-road in a field or you're part of that horsey community, this type of tyre is not going to help you out. It's got no qualities about it whatsoever that will help you get off a loose, muddy, grassy surface. This tyre is specifically designed to provide you excellent traction on tarmac. This tyre provides you excellent, well, not excellent, but reasonably good off-road performance, because it's a little luggy and it has these lugs on the side of the tyre that can dig into the fresh dirt and churn it away to provide you traction and steering. This tyre, you can see here, we've got lugs that almost curve round a bit like a tractor tyre, and again this is an excellent mechanism to provide some sort of traction in loose surfaces, and in this case particularly designed for snow and ice. This tyre isn't terrible in off-road circumstances, especially when it's wintry, because with this tyre, even as good as it is in virtue of its soft compound, it's not always able to provide you the maximum amount of traction on the snow and the ice. And so what happens is that when the snow and the ice sits on top of mud, the mud is frozen and there's nothing to dig away at, and so there's very little traction even if you go off-road. So in winter time, and you are off-road, you're still always better having a winter tyre because it's designed to run on that slippery surface that ice and snow provides. Sometimes you can't always dig through that snow and ice to the ground where the properties of this tyre start to kick in, where the loose surface can be churned away and dug away and to find more solid terrain underneath. So if you're off-road at all, you're still probably better with this tyre than you would be with this tyre in the winter time. This is why when people ask me what they need to put on the vehicle to head up to the Arctic Circle, this is what I recommend. It's because even if you might end up in a ditch or on a gravel road, you're probably going to be driving over that terrain in snow and ice on the top of that terrain, and this is where this tyre excels. This tyre, of course, doesn't help you at all on snow and ice because it's a hard compound. And these little lines called sipes don't exist at all in here. You can see that there are some sipes in this tyre. Now, sipes are a good tool for winter tyres, but they're also a mechanism to weaken the tyre surface because the little lines make the rubber more fragile and easier to pull off, certainly in gravel and more aggressive road conditions. So if you're spinning your tyre a lot, these sipes can weaken these tyres and permit chunks of the tyre to be ripped off. You can see here there are fracture lines where the tyre has been off-road and it started to pull away at the material of the tyre itself. So the purpose of a sipe is to trap snow into the sipe, as it opens up, as the tyre compresses, it opens up and it squeezes snow into here. Snow on snow provides you the traction of your tyre. Rubber on snow is quite slippery. It doesn't actually provide you the sort of traction that your tyre needs in those weather conditions. And so the more sipes you have, the more traction you have on snow and ice. And you'll see that dedicated winter tyres have quite a lot of these little lines, because these little lines are the mechanism by which they trap snow, and that gives you the squeak that you need when you've got traction. So if you get a squeak, if you get that cute little snowy squeak noise when you're driving your tyre over the snow, that's when you've got more traction. This tyre has no sipes and has no ability to trap snow. Accordingly, you've got this very hard compound, you've got no sipes, you've got no studs, you've got no blocks and no sharp edges. This tyre is terrible for this sort of weather, the ice and snow weather. And this is why people find themselves in a lot of trouble when it snows like this, because they haven't got the right tyres on to manage the traction that the vehicle can provide. Land Rovers are extremely efficient vehicles, but if they don't have traction, it doesn't matter how many wheels are spinning or how many wheels have got power. If you've no traction, you've no drive. And this is why tyres are so important. So this tyre provides no winter performance. This tyre has fewer sipes, but a softer compound. It has some deep, sharp edges to dig into the snow, and it provides some mechanism to squeeze snow out of the way. So this is a moderate tyre. Its soft compound makes it a little worse for AT work because the tyre wears more easily, and it's not quite as resilient on a gravel road surface. But this tyre does have enough sharp edges to be useful in mud, and enough qualities and properties with the soft compound and the super soft aramid sidewalls, which are very strong but very flexible. And this provides a far greater performance in snow and ice than most ATs. The downside is that it wears more easily because the rubber is softer. This tyre has these water ejection and snow and slush ejection sites. It's got these curved edges to be able to dig into fresh snow. It's got the studs which provide traction in ice, and I'll discuss that later. It's got a myriad of these sipes to trap snow, and it's got these soft, flexible but very strong aramid sidewalls. So this tyre is always going to be a far superior tyre on the road. In the snow and the ice, and off the road in the snow and the ice. The downside to this, of course, is that it's a very soft compound. It's easily worn in the summer on the hot when it gets hot, because the rubber in this is even softer still than this. Now, I wanted to talk to you briefly just before we close about aramid sidewalls. There used to be this story about 6-ply and 10-ply tyres, and that doesn't apply anymore because that technology is old hat. But the kind of terminology and the implicit understanding of 6-ply and 6-ply and 10-ply still remains. Basically what that meant was the way that the sidewalls was constructed. I'm going to move this tyre out of the way and we'll spin this tyre so we can have a look. So this tyre sidewall, this is the sidewall. This sidewall is a Nokian design called the aramid sidewall. And basically in the old 6 and 10-ply tyres you'd have multiple strings of banding of steel and rubber that would go across, and 6-ply is exactly what it sort of says it is, and a 10-ply tyre is exactly what it says it is, but it has 4 more than the 6, 4 more of those layers than it does on the 6-ply tyres. And what that means is that the side is far more resilient, it's far more resistant to kinds of puncturing and deformation, and if you run the tyres at a lower pressure to permit you to deflate the tyre, there's greater strength in the sidewall. But in the winter time that comes with there's a disadvantage to that, and the disadvantage is that the stronger the sidewall, and running these tyres at lower pressures, which you should in the winter, the sidewalls become too strong. And basically what happens, and I'm going to wheel this back and hope you can see the bottom, is when you start turning a corner, the tyre basically over exaggerated, but it does that. And if you have hard sidewalls, the whole tyre lifts at the bottom on one side, while the weight of the car is on the other side. And this happens when you turn corners and when you're going round bends, and also when you turn the steering. But a soft sidewall would permit this tyre to flex what they call laterally, while the whole of the tyre maintains contact with the surface of the road. This is why winter tyres have these soft sidewalls. Now, ordinarily this would be a very bad design for an off-road tyre, in virtue of the fact that it would make them susceptible to puncturing. The 6 and 10-ply design doesn't exist anymore. And so there are, with this tyre especially, there are a couple of different sort of thicknesses that you can get for the sidewall. They make a heavy casing and a light casing, what we call light truck and heavy duty now. This tyre is available in both, but the special aramid design means that they've reduced the thickness of this sidewall, but they've made it out of a different material, a harder, more resistant material, this aramid stuff that makes them very strong and robust, but allows them to be flexible. And when that flexibility is maintained, it means that as the tyre moves, like this does, you can see it sort of starts to deflect on the top. The sidewalls, which are a bit more squishy, like this, because this is only a regular road tyre, this squishy sidewall allows the top of the tyre to move laterally, and the flexion is in this part, the sidewall of the tyre. And having the flexion in this sidewall means that you can sort of keep the surface fastened to the road. Imagine this was the road. You can keep the surface fastened to the road. And that's important because in the snow and the ice, reduced traction, reduced amount of contact area permits this tyre to only have the traction of, if the tyre was to lift on a corner, it would mean that only this was having proper contact and there'd be less pressure on the ground here. And what you need in the snow is to dig deep into the snow and the ice to provide maximum contact area, to provide maximum traction. And if you're only picking up, you're only using part of the tyre to contact the surface, that's when the weight of the vehicle, the inertia of the vehicle, forces the traction away, because it's only got a little bit of contact area, and that's why you get a slip and a slide, because only a little bit of the tyre at any time has got any sort of contact with the ground. So another reason that you need to have a good winter tyre is because they've got these special sidewalls that are flexible, and this is the reason you've got to keep the pressure low. If you keep the pressure down to about 30 or 35 psi, there's a lot less pressure pushing on those sidewalls, making the tyre a lot less rigid, and that lack of rigidness provides greater sort of flexion in the tyre and the sidewall when you start cornering. I know that a lot of folk aren't permitted to run studs because the law in the country requires, well, says that you can't run studs, but in those areas that you can run studs, these are always more efficient. On ice, on snow it doesn't really matter, but on ice they're always more efficient because they dig into the ice to provide like a hard tractive effort on that slippery glazed surface. Now these are 4 years old, so these studs are beginning to look very sad. Like I said, this tyre's probably done 25,000, maybe 30,000 miles through the mountains and up and down to Edmonton and all over Canada really. And you'll notice that there are two different types of studs on this Nokian Hakkapeliitta 9. Nokian have produced a 10, and the 10 is an upgrade, and they're always making things slightly better, and so the 10 is an upgrade. The downside to the 10 is that it's quite road biased, which means it's very, very good in the city on glazed ice like these roads here, but it loses out a bit because it doesn't have these sharp, flat, almost tractor styled edges with the ability to dig away soft snow. So they look a bit more like that other tyre, sort of cross between the two really. And while they're very, very good, and probably better than this in the city, they do lose out because they're able to dig away at that soft snow, meaning they're excellent on on ice and roads like this. But if you're in the mountains and you're in a field or something like that, this tyre is probably a better compromise. Anyway, returning to these studs, you'll notice that there's two styles. This style has a triangular kind of edge to it, and this style has a more sort of a squished rhomboid sort of affair. These ones here are designed to provide traction in a straight line, and these ones are designed to provide directional traction, so that when you're turning the vehicle there's always a flat edge right on the direction of travel, and that provides greater direction, greater stability in cornering, because as you tilt the vehicle slightly, as you put all the inertia onto one side, the aramid sidewalls deflect, the whole of the flat surface remains on the ground, but you're going to need that extra directional sort of pull and traction with these studs. It is possible for studs to pull out, and I did notice earlier on that I had a hole somewhere where there was one missing, so they do come out from time to time. And it is something you should be worried about in virtue of the longevity of the tyre. But Nokian tyres, these studs are built in the factory, they're put in the factory, and that makes them far more resilient, and they've got a very big bottom to them, so they're far harder to actually pull out if you use them on the tarmac when there's no softer surface. Obviously they will wear to some degree, so these studs, having 25,000 miles on, are sort of past the best, and it's probably about time that I replace them, despite having, as you can see, an awful lot of meat left on the tyre. They are starting to lose their effectiveness on the ice because the studs are starting to wear. There are multiple types of studs that you can find. Some KO2s, for instance, and Duratrax are studdable, which means that if you buy the tyre, you can get your tyre shop to insert studs. But those studs are much easier to pull out because you put them in once the tyre is cast. These are put in before the tyre is cast, or in the casting process, and that means that the studs are sort of well entrenched in the tyre. they remain, despite how much hammer I've given this round corners in the mountains. I'm going to see if I can find a hole. I haven't lost that many studs at all. Really is one missing, look there. So they do go, but they're really not. The Nokian tyre studs are really very dependable and very long lived, and this is another reason that I rate Nokian tyres over and above any other sort of tyre for your vehicle, especially if you live in a country like I do, where you have this sort of weather for a couple of days, perhaps a week, and then we get gorgeous sunshine again. That's the reason I moved to this tyre from the Cooper AT3s. The Cooper AT3s were very, very poor in this sort of shoulder season weather because the rubber compound was very hard, and they had very few. They had some sipes in them, but the sidewalls were very hard, especially the AT3 XLTs, which had very strengthened sidewalls. Because they were designed to be an extra heavy duty tyre. That's the point of them. So that made them very poor in this sort of weather. I keep these on now until sort of December, when I swap these over to these, because we're going to have in December, of course, longer periods of rough weather. But these tyres are sufficiently good that on this kind of terrain, this kind of weather, and this kind of use, they exceed the performance of the KO2s, of the Duratrax, or the Cooper AT3s, or the Falken Wildpeaks. These are significantly better. I would say the stopping distance in these compared to the others is probably 100% better. And by that, if I mean it takes you 50 feet to stop, these tyres will stop you in 25 feet. And the difference is that significant. This dedicated winter tyre, when fitted to this vehicle in these kinds of conditions, cold weather conditions, ice and snow, this will improve your stopping distance by maybe 200 or 300%. That means if it takes you 100 feet to stop, this would probably stop you in 25 feet. The difference of these tyres cannot be underestimated. Like they're night and day. Running dedicated winter tyres, and I strongly and heartily recommend that anybody that does a fairly considerable amount of miles in the winter procure themselves a set of dedicated winter tyres, and preferably on another set of rims. That way you can just swap them over straight away in your garage without taking them to a tyre shop. This tyre has been on, as I've mentioned, probably 4 seasons now, and we're still on 80%. But I tramped up to Calgary daily throughout the winter a couple of years ago, and I was putting on 350 to 400 miles a day on these tyres. And the majority of the wear obviously comes from that, and not all of the winter was on solid ice and snow on the roads. Much of that 400 miles, 350 and 400 miles was on bare tarmac. Cold, but bare tarmac, and that's where these tyres have started to wear away the studs. But even after all that time, you can't tell, but even after all this time, there's still, I wonder if I have a way of showing you. Yes, I do, perhaps here. So even you can still see that if I run the blade over the tyre, you can still see that it catches. And that's the point of these studs. That's why you keep the low pressures down. That's why the rubber compound is soft, so that the weight of the vehicle presses it down a bit and exposes the stud as the tyre rolls round to the surface. The weight of the vehicle compresses the rubber ever so slightly and provides a fresh biting edge on the stud. So one of the last things that I'm going to show you is the sidewall profile here. You'll see these sharp edges and sharp lines. Not all sidewalls of AT tyres have any kind of stuff on them at all. The Duratrax does, the KO2 is famous for it, but these edges here are designed to dig away at the sidewalls of a mud rut, so that it allows you to dig your way out of a rut and climb out of that deep rut into the top by providing large surfaces that will nibble away at the edge of the rut that you're in and allow the tyre to climb out of it. So not all AT tyres have these, but as you can see, actually you can see how soft in terms of pressure these sidewalls are, because you can see I can deflect them like this just by pushing on them with my thumb. But that doesn't mean the sidewall's weak. It just means that the sidewall has a lot of flexion, which is the important part of this tyre in terms of its excellent performance in this kind of weather. The sidewall itself is very hard, it's very tough because of this special aramid sidewall technology. The very last thing I wanted to mention is the width of the tyre. The 275s are not my favourite tyre width. I don't prefer to go wider. It was a sort of a truism that was discovered in the Camel Trophy years, that narrower tyres enable you to dig deeper into a rut to find more tractive surface. Narrower tyres increase the pounds per square inch of the vehicle on the surface, providing greater greater grip because of the decreased surface area.
With conditions improving as the task progressed, the Germans proved to be the first to power their way through without having to resort to the winch. Franz Alt and Jürgen Kelber triumph.
And really the only reason for a wider tyre, and one of the only benefits of lowering your pressures in the tyre, is to increase the surface area to provide greater traction on surfaces that are loose, like sand, or very deep snow, where you need that larger surface area to actually decrease the amount of weight per square inch on the surface. So this is a 255/50/20. This is the original tyre size. This is a 275/55/20. The 275 size refers to the width of the tyre. The 55 in the tyre rating refers to the percentage of this width as your sidewall height, and then the 20 refers to the size of the diameter, basically the hole in the middle that your wheel fits through. Your wheel fits through. So the 255/50 tyre is, as you can see, a lot lower. It's probably 2 inches lower than this tyre, but it's also nearly an inch narrower, and that's far better in snow and ice than a wider tyre. Unfortunately, tyre options in the 255 range are restricted. Nokian do make a 255/55/20, which would be my recommended wheel size for this tyre, but AT tyres are only available in Duratrack at the 255/55/20. Duratrack aren't a bad AT tyre, but they're not as good as this tyre, probably not even close to being as good as this tyre in the snow and ice. They will have the edge on other terrain, sort of gravelly terrains or sort of rocky terrains. So Duratrack are a very good tyre, and they probably wear just as quickly as these, but they're also literally twice the money. This set was $1,250, and when I priced up a set of 4 Goodyear Duratracks, they were $2,750 for 4. So they're literally twice the money. However, if you can go with a narrower profile for your winter tyre, do so. 255/55/20 is my recommended size for for the Land Rover Defender, the Land Rover Discovery 5, the Land Rover Discovery LR4s or LR3s, and the Range Rover L322s and 320s, the sports. 255/55/20 is the perfect size, because it also means that you don't have to fiddle about on the L322 with anything as I've mentioned on these other sorts of wheel arches of fiddling about without raising the suspension slightly to account for it. However, this size, the 255/50/20, is an inch too low, and while it's good on the profile, the sidewall height is missing. This tyre has nearly over 6 inches of sidewall height. This tyre has about 4.5, 4 3/4. Actually, about 4 3/4. So this tyre is quite a bit lower in sidewall height. Not that I care about deflating the tyre, but what I'm saying is it provides you a little extra ground clearance. These tyres are a nice sort of cheap alternative. The 275 55/20s are cheap, and they will fit the Defenders and the Discoveries without any augmentation at all. But on the L322, you do need to tweak it, as you've seen in my earlier videos. The reason I have this size is because I have this size in my winter tyre, because I had the winter tyre on the Discovery 5 and on the Defender, and actually on my Range Rover before that, because I've had it that long. And so I matched this size to that size, so that once I'd made the modifications of the vehicle, I didn't need to worry about recalibrating the suspension between winter and summer. Right, so there you have it. I do hope that video has been of some use to you. It's quite timely given the weather, and I'm hoping that I can get this out quickly enough that this might help you make some decisions about your tyre selections for winter if you're worried about swapping over to winter tyres. Please feel free to ask any questions. I'll do my best to answer them, you know, if I can, and we've got lots of other people that can weigh in as well on the comments. Please do like and subscribe to the video, so that I can find out what you're interested in and find out what times you're watching the video, so I can best release them at a time that suits your viewing preferences. It's very important to be part of this community, and I do appreciate you liking and subscribing to the channel. One final remark I should make is that tyres are a matter of regional sort of preference. So I am aware of the fact that many of my viewers live in America and down south and in Australia, where of course you don't have this this winter issue. But if you do live in Britain, or in in Northern Europe, or in Russia, or in the Scandinavian countries, or in Canada, of course, where we have this kind of weather all the time, these sorts of winter tyres are a very important selection, and you should really consider adding them to your circulation, and picking perhaps an AT tyre or a road tyre for your summer use, if that is your preference, and then a dedicated winter tyres. There are multiple different types of winter tyre, and it has been demonstrated statistically and in multiple tests that the Nokian Hakkapeliitta outperforms all other winter tyres by a significant margin, sort of 30% better than any other winter tyre. And this is not just me saying this. This has been done on, third-party sort of independent road tests, and there isn't. I've run all manner of winter tyres, and I can, on my own humble opinion, I can guarantee that they're also much better. However, one thing you should know is that soft aramid wall, when you first try the tyres, it can make the vehicle feel a little floaty, because it is a little like being on a marshmallow, and that's intended. You know, the road surface is bonded very well, but the vehicle does move a little bit on the top in terms of the soft sidewall, letting the tyre flex when you go around corners. So if you do buy the Nokians and you put them on and you're like, bloody hell, Firthy, what are you going on about? These things are like riding on marshmallows. Yes, they are, and that's the point. That's what makes them better than everything else. Anyway, thanks very much for tuning in. I do look forward to seeing you in the next video. Do take care in this weather. Look after yourself. Remember, reduce your speed, increase your stopping distance, increase the gap between you and the car in front. Watch out for the tyres of other vehicles to give you an indication of when they're slipping, and make sure that you reduce your speed in your corners. Use your downshifting if it's at all possible. Rely less on your brakes and all that usual kind of stuff. I've got a couple of videos on winter driving tips. But take care out there, people, and we'll see you next time. Cheerio.